with the media out there, how do you talk to your clients and people that you're helping through them thinking that they're never going to be able to keep a space decluttered and organized once they do get there?
I go with the radical honesty and say, you're not. You're not ever going to keep it decluttered. You're not ever going to keep it organized.
Hey everyone, I'm Megs, and you're listening to the Mindful Megs podcast, Organizing an ADHD Brain, where you will hear stories from me and others on how we organize both our brains and our lives while living with ADHD. We talk about how ADHD can be your superpower if you know how to harness it. I found out I had ADHD 2 years ago, and it was very difficult for me to find acceptance. Now that I know so much, I want to share what I know and help others understand that this diagnosis is not your downfall. It's a eureka moment where you can now understand how your brain operates and how to figure out how to thrive. You can expect to feel inspired, like you're not alone, and learn about so many of the incredible organizational tools there are to help your head stay on straight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hey everyone, I'm super excited to jump into part 2 with Alyssa. We start by talking about how Alyssa's brain works and what she really loves about what she can do working with her clients, and then of course working on her own. We also talk about how do you keep a space organized once you get organized? Is that even a thing? She also shares a little bit about diving into how to really figure out what is a problem in your home. Is it just that things are out of place, or is there something deeper that's going on? Earlier on this week, I announced that I am starting a Patreon. It is now live, and I've included the link in the show notes below. I have some behind the scenes snippets from this episode that I will drop this week as soon as you sign up. I also have a before and after of a project, a 14-hour project I just completed that I'm going to drop here first. If you like the show, please consider supporting, and I will thank each and every one of my patrons on my next episode. I cannot wait. And let me know what else you want to see, and I would love to hear your opinion. If you want to support the show but also support yourself, check out my HelloFresh link below. It takes the thought process out of planning your meal for the week, and the link below gets you a free box of meals so you can see if it works out for you or not. I also love CBD bath bombs, and I have been using Remedy bath bombs for years now. I have posted my code below, and it not only supports my friend's local business, she makes small batch skincare as well as CBD bath bombs and regular bath bombs. You're also supporting my need for self-care, and of course your own, because you're buying something amazing for yourself and you get to save a little bit of money at the same time. Without further ado, let's jump right in to the interview with Alyssa, part 2.
Can you tell me what is your ADHD or autism superpower?
So I always sort of hesitate to think of it as a superpower. And I know that this is very popular language and that this is really empowering language. And I still hesitate with it a little bit because for me, when I think of superhero movies, there's generally something that has happened to this person that has caused them to have this superpower. And very rarely is it something that they were just born with. I mean, sometimes it is, but even then, often they're not quite human in some way. And dealing with that personally has made me a little bit uncomfortable thinking about it like this in terms of like what makes a superpower a superpower. But one of my favorite aspects of the way that my brain works is my ability to see patterns in ways that are not necessarily obvious to other people, to see places where, especially in home organization, places where we're doing things that seem like they make sense, but they really don't, or places where we're telling ourselves something or doing something in a way that is actually giving us the opposite of the result that we're trying to achieve. I have always been like this. I can't remember a time when I haven't done that. When as a child, I would analyze the like commercials on the radio where they have like the really fast voice at the end that gives you all of the details that you're not supposed to hear. I would be listening to the commercial and I would say, okay, well, they said these words. So they want you to think that they mean this, but what they said was not that. And people were always like, God, can you stop? Can you stop analyzing the commercials, please? Like, we get it. We know how advertising works. Yes, they're lying to us, whatever. But now I can use that same skill and look at various other things and say, okay, here is where this has been set up for you as something that's going to be really successful. But what they didn't account for are these things, or what they're not making room for is actually causing you more problems. That is something that is so intrinsic to the way that my brain works, but it's also just fun. And I really enjoy being able to find those places where, okay, this organization resource says that you can just do this, but that only works if you don't have these other things. So this is why this is not working for you, or whatever it is that is creating the pattern, because generally things happen in patterns.
Yeah.
Our human behavior is fairly predictable. I had in college, I had a professor who was, he was teaching abnormal psychology. And he said, humans are very predictable until they start behaving in ways that are unpredictable. And we call that abnormal psychology, and we fix them so they're predictable again. And that was one of the strangest things I had ever heard a professor say, but it has really stuck with me in that we do all behave in predictable patterns for us. I mean, people who know you can say, oh, here's what Megs would do in this situation. Like, oh yeah, you know what she would say? She would say this thing, and they're probably right. So being able to see those patterns and then use them to help create systems that actually work is just one of my favorite things about the whole neurodivergent experience.
That's fascinating. I love that so much. And I love your perspective on the superpower. I've heard that before, actually, from a couple of people. And to me, the superpower is not necessarily about being superhuman. It's more about how I embrace who I am to the fullest and really enjoy what my brain can do versus what it can't. And I've considered this before, but maybe I'll consider it again, just rephrasing it, because maybe I'll just say, like, how freaking awesome are you? Share with me how freaking awesome you are. And then that takes away the literalness of your beautiful explanation of what a superhero is and how they've gained something.
I love that, because you're right. A lot of the messaging that we get is about the things we can't do or the things we don't do well. And frankly, that's exhausting, because there are many things that we do so well, and there are many things that we do better than people who don't think the way we do. So I definitely think that it's important to focus on those areas and how we can use them, and not just how we can focus on all the things that the powers that be, whoever they are in the infamous "they don't want you to know" statements, have decided that we're able to do and achieve. So I love that you have that emphasis.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think even with neurotypical people, I think so often we just focus on what we can't do to try to elevate that. But what if we just enhanced what we can do? Think about the world that we would live in. I'd love to know, with the media out there, social media and all of these memes and all of this talk about ADHD, how do you talk to your clients and people that you're helping through them thinking that they're never going to be able to keep a space decluttered and organized once they do get there?
I go with the radical honesty and say, you're not. You're not ever going to keep it decluttered. You're not ever going to keep it organized. The point is that when it gets decluttered, when it gets disorganized from living your life in your home, you know what to do. You know how to bring it back. Because, I mean, as someone who has children, your kids have a couple of friends over for pizza and a movie, your house is a wreck. And the only option for stopping that from happening is saying nobody gets to actually live here. We have to treat our home like a museum. You can't touch anything. You can't move anything. You can't use anything. And that's not a way to live. If you're living in your home, disorganization is going to happen. And the point is not to prevent it from happening. The point is being able to easily return it to the state that is functional and enjoyable for you as you're actually living there.
I love that. And I even go as far as to say, once you get to a place where you have touched every place in your home and decluttered it, found a place where things go, even if your house gets messy, I would argue that it's not even disorganized because you still know where everything goes. It's just messy. And that's living your life. Because yes, kids play and you get busy, and sometimes you put your keys on the kitchen counter instead of back in the drawer that you've designated them to go in. And maybe you find that you're always putting your keys on the kitchen counter. So the result of that is, okay, maybe I just have a spot on the kitchen counter for my damn keys to go because that's where I always put them. And now I'm just going to have a space for them there. So what would be your advice for people who are just trying to figure out how to get organized? They have ADHD, they have autism, and there's just stuff everywhere.
The first thing I would say is to get really specific about what the problem actually is, because we as humans have a tendency to make big blanket statements. And we'll say stuff like, oh, I hate my living room. Okay, great. There's nothing you can do about that. Zoom in. Maybe what you hate is that, your spouse always eats chips on the couch and there's always crumbs on the floor and they stick to your feet and they get stuck to your pants when you sit on the couch. And maybe that's what you hate. Maybe what you hate is that your dog always has toys all over the floor and you're constantly tripping on them, and there doesn't seem to be a good way to rein that in. Or maybe what you hate is that the lighting in your living room is really bad and you constantly have a headache whenever you're in there. Or maybe it's the sound, or maybe it's something else that's going on in that room that's causing you to struggle in there. Maybe it is a general feeling of messiness and disorganization. But how far can you zoom in and get specific about what is actually the problem? Because if the problem is, hey, if you're going to eat chips in here, I really need you to vacuum afterward, that's a solvable problem. But I hate my living room is not really a solvable problem. So if you're setting yourself up with unsolvable problems, they will continue to feel unsolvable. That's the nature of the unsolvable problem. As soon as you can make that problem solvable, you have a way in.
I love that so much. So break it down. If you see something that's not working for yourself, break it into something that's bite size that you could attack and figure out, okay, well, if the dog's toys are all over the floor all the time, maybe you have a basket for all of those toys that they go in. And if you're really ambitious, you train your dog how to put their toys away. I'm not there. Don't call me for that.
No, I have cats. They're not going to do that.
Okay, there you go.
Their toys are all over the floor. I just fling them back into the basket as I walk through the room because they're never going to put them away. They will absolutely get them out all on their own. No worries about that. But putting them away, I have to do.
Yes, exactly. There's just some things that we have to accept as our responsibility. We've brought these pets into our life, and so we are going to have to clean up after them. And there's nothing wrong with that.
There is not. But it's so much easier if you have a system for it. If you say to yourself, okay, as soon as I log off for the day and I walk in here, and my normal routine is that I go to the kitchen and get a big glass of water, the next thing I'm going to do is walk over to the living room and toss the cat toys into the bin while I drink it. Or, if you can stack those things into your routine. I know there's a term that people use called habit stacking. It drives me crazy because I don't easily form habits on purpose. Not on purpose. I can form a habit like that. But, something I'm trying to do on purpose, it's a real struggle. So I refer to mine as routine stacking, where if I can build something into a routine that I already have, then all that has to happen is that routine gets triggered, and now it's easy to remember to do the thing instead of my brain having to hold on to it. So building those things in can be really, really helpful.
I like that a lot. And I have a friend who was sharing with me that she did that as well. Before she could have a cup of coffee every morning, she has to drink a cup of water. And so that's something that she's formed. I actually, when I brush my teeth at night, I did some routine stacking where I put away all of my face stuff because, oh my gosh, my side of this thing, no matter what. And I have a weekly routine now for cleaning up and making sure I declutter my bathroom. But now as I'm brushing my teeth every night, if I'm also putting things away, it helps me because I brush my teeth longer and I'm getting those things away and out of sight so it doesn't bother me and my brain as I wake up in the morning. And even just things like talking to myself as, okay, would morning Megan appreciate what you're about to do tonight? How would morning Megan look at you as nighttime Megan? We have to be kind to her, right? And that's
Yeah,
helped a lot.
I love that. I think of that, and I talk to clients about that too, where we have a tendency as autistics, as ADHDers, we feel our feelings really big, which means that when we're trying to avoid something, when we don't want to do something, we feel that really big too. So comparing, how do I know that I feel right now about how much I don't want to do that compared to how might I feel tomorrow when I wake up and it's not done, is really an apples to oranges comparison. But comparing, okay, tomorrow is coming. I'm going to, God willing, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to have to deal with this either being done or not done. So, how am I going to feel about it if it's done versus how am I going to feel about it if it's not done? And which one of those do I want?
Yeah.
Whatever we're feeling now is always going to feel more immediate to us. But by morning, that's gone. And like you're saying, now morning you has to deal with this. My husband pretty regularly will do something and then he'll say, wow, past me was an asshole.
Yeah.
And so thinking about it that way and trying to avoid when the time comes, you have to compare oranges to or apples to apples or oranges to oranges. So how will you feel about it if it's done versus how will you feel about it if it's not done just feels very different in the body as a comparison to how will I maybe feel versus how do I feel right now.
That's huge. That's actually sometimes the time when I will use that time boxing and say, okay, I'm going to clean the kitchen for 15 minutes. I have 15 minutes that I could dedicate to that right now. But then after that, I'm done. I'm going to bed and I'm leaving this. And whatever morning Megan sees is what I've done. And that's fine. But normally 15 minutes is all I need to get what I have to do done. And then that feels so much lighter too, because that only took me 15 minutes where I was
Yes.
catastrophizing what was about to take place in my brain. And I dedicated myself. I'm like, okay, I can do anything in 15 minutes. I'm going to do this. So,
Yes. I love that. And also 15 minutes in a system that functions well for you is very different than 15 minutes in a system that you struggle to maintain. You're going to accomplish a lot more in that 15 minutes in a system that is working for you. I've had people say to me before, like, everyone says if you do 15 minutes at night, then you can keep up with it. And I just can't. And I'm looking at their systems going, yeah, I believe that because the things that you're trying to do are not working with your brain. They don't feel logical. They don't feel intuitive. So that 15 minutes feels really hard and doesn't actually accomplish very much. So if you're feeling like I do 15 minutes at the end of the day and it gets me nowhere, you're spending 15 minutes doing the wrong things. You're working in a system that's not really effective.
that makes so much sense. Oh, I would love to have another conversation with you because I feel like there's so much more that we can continue to share and support the neurodivergent community. Because I also believe in the abundance mindset. I think there's so many people out there that could use our services and use this conversation to know that they're not alone. There's so many people out there that are either struggling to where you don't even know where to begin, or are maybe they're in the middle of it. Maybe they've become a professional organizer, but it doesn't matter. I think the more that we can share, the more that we can impact the world in a way that, gosh, when we have organized systems, we can conquer the world. That's my perspective.
I
So,
completely agree.
where can we find you?
So I primarily hang out on Instagram over at Alyssa's Yellow House. And I also hang out quite a bit in my Facebook group, which is the same name, Alyssa's Yellow House. So I absolutely love talking to people about this. I would love to come back and talk with you more about this. I love chatting with people on my Facebook group or my Instagram. I do also have a website, which is alyssasyellowhouse.com, which has my email and all that stuff on it. So any of the ways to contact me are great. And I just really love talking about this. And I find that when we think of organization as a concept, we think of the home edit, the Pinterest, those kinds of things. And we don't think about how emotionally charged they can really be. And that's one of my favorite parts about organization is going from how do we organize things so that we just don't ever have to feel like that ever again. And I do not believe in shaming people or judging people. I mean, that would make me an enormous hypocrite because, like I just told you, I thought I was crazy until I was like in my late 20s because I thought I was the only person in the world dealing with this problem. So I have no grounds to judge or criticize anybody.
Excellent. And do you do just in-person organizing or do you do any coaching?
I am entirely online.
Oh, you are.
I am. I have worked with several people who said, like, I had someone come into my home. It wasn't a great fit. They organized for me. 2 months later, it was like they'd never been there. And I thought, you know what? I can step into that space. And I'm so glad that I have encountered a couple now of ADHD home organizers that go into people's homes and help them physically organize their stuff. And I am delighted that that's a thing that is around at this point. But I generally specialize in, I can show you how to do that for your own home. Because I know there are also a lot of people for whom having someone come in is just not accessible, or it's too embarrassing, or there are other reasons they just don't want to do that. And so for those people, that's the resource that I provide, is I can teach you how to make this work for your space, for your brain, and get those systems into alignment.
That's incredible. When I first started organizing, I wanted to know exactly what I had to do and what to do and what the right way to do it was. Ugh. But now I've learned first, I didn't want to just be a service worker. I don't want to go into someone's home and organize it in a way without talking to them. And I had experienced some events where that happened. And I'm like, this is no way to live because I'm going to do something and they're going to undo it because this has nothing to do with them. This has everything to do with just what my vision is. And that's not what I want to do in my own professional organizing business. So I have incorporated online coaching as well, which is so fun because you get to ask so many questions to help them make the decisions that fit their needs. And then I do still do the in-person organizing as well.
Yeah.
I love that you offer that coaching. And I think that for everyone out there, there is a perfect coach that can walk them through that. So if you're listening, go talk to Alyssa because I'm so incredibly thrilled that you're out there coaching people through this. And you've got some incredible concepts and thought processes for people to consider as they're developing those systems for their house. This is so cool. Alyssa, thank you so much for being on today. Thanks for being so candid and open and honest and sharing about your incredible business. And I can't wait for everyone to go follow you and see what you're up to.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a good time. I love talking about this stuff. And I'm sure that, when you have more of a special interest in home organization, after a while, your family is like, we understand. So I love getting to talk to other people about this.
I'm so thrilled to be able to share that episode with Alyssa with you today. Thank you for listening to part 1 and part 2. Connect with Alyssa, follow her on social media. She's got some amazing tips and some really fun videos. In addition to that, I've got some bonus content for you in my Patreon link. Go ahead and click below and sign up. I've got some additional content from this week's episode, as well as an incredible video that I just put together from a 14-hour project I did with one of my clients. I cannot wait to share it with you. I'm not sharing it anywhere else on social media except for my Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting and have an incredible day.
If you need help with your ADHD organization or anything along those lines, please reach out to me. If you like what you heard, please share with others and leave a review. I would love to hear from you. My contact information is in the show notes below. Share your stories, share any feedback, share what you'd like to hear next. I am also a strong proponent of taking time off for yourself, and I've included a link to Remedy Bath Skincare below. This is owned and operated by one of my favorite people who has been in business for a couple years now, and I have been using her CBD bath bombs for years, and they're so incredible. I've never had a bath bomb that smells or works better than this, and CBD is just an extra pressure taker offer. If those are the words you want to use. Check it out below. I also included my link. It's Meg Bathco, and you can save 10% off of your order. Another way you can support the podcast is by using my link if you want to try out HelloFresh. It's an amazing way to automate your grocery shopping and try new foods. It takes so much of the thinking out of planning for the week. My ADHD brain has been so appreciative of HelloFresh. We've actually been using for I think all of 2024 now. We've tried so many new foods, some that we didn't like as much as we have liked, but oh, so many amazing flavors. And I'm so thrilled to not have to think ahead to try to figure out what's for dinner, especially when my husband and I are managing jobs and then, of course, our kiddos at the same time. I want to reiterate, I am not a doctor, and most of the people I talk to are not doctors or medical professionals. What's really important here is that you shouldn't be using the show to diagnose. I wanted to make this show available to people who wanted to be able to relate to other people like them. I know I needed this tenfold when I first found out that I had ADHD, and I didn't know there were so many other people out there who had either gone through similar circumstances or were going through them at the same time as I was. So if this helps anyone feel like their brain works like other people's and we can relate to something, if you're trying to figure out if you have ADHD or not, please talk to your therapist or a medical professional so that you can truly understand what kind of options you have out there for support and, of course, for medicine. And then come here as you're along the ride for the journey and listen to people who are going through similar circumstances and understand that it's not a one-size-fits-all sort of diagnosis. There's so many options and opportunities out there for you.